Alright, and hello to YouTube. What's up with Crackin? My name is Crackin Atkins, coming with a little bit of a spur of the moment video. I was playing some games yesterday, and this topic kind of came up. It's something that I've been saying for some time now in like commentary and even in passing conversation. It was like a spur of the moment thing that came up yesterday where I was asked to define what it actually meant, and then I realized it was just a concept in my head that I had been saying a lot, but didn't actually have to put it into words until I was actually pretty much called to the carpet for it, and that is the notion of early, mid, and late game when discussing BBTAG. So I wanted to make this video to kind of provide some context as to what I mean by those terms and how those terms can be maybe a little bit more quantifiable or identifiable and a bit more comprehensive. Because again, this is a thing that I kind of say, I don't know if anybody else in the community says early, mid, and late game. So it is very subjective. There isn't anything really definitive about it. There's a very kind of like headspace type of theory, I guess. This isn't like tech. But it is like a real way that I kind of look at the game and I've come to understand it. And I don't know, I want to share it with others, see if it makes sense. Basically, the way that it came about is I actually realized this after playing a set with YoFavScrub. So for context, I was playing Mitri Batista and I was playing against his Ragnar Ruby. And like, if you know anything about Mitri Batista, it's a very aggressive team. And, like, basically the way that it's set up is that you can snowball from the beginning all the way to the very end, basically through that team's lockdown and high-low game. It's a very well-crafted team if the players are able to execute it properly without allowing for too many points of escape. You're really just kind of stuck in the blender forever. Through playing games with Scrub, and I mean Scrub is a fantastic player, right? But we had a little bit of a post-game talk, and I expressed like some disappointment with that I had little to no presence in like early to mid-game interactions, that I only started finding my footing towards the end of the mid-game and going to the late game. And after saying that, Scrub's response was basically, what? Like, what does that mean? What is early or mid game? Like, what does that actually mean? And then I realized I was just basically generalizing a concept that was in my head of like, I know what like through our games with the early and mid game meant, but then I realized that in saying that, it's not really saying much of anything at all. That's kind of the purpose of the video, to kind of maybe splice up what I mean when I say that. So should I say it, it'll mean something rather than just kind of being there. Again, this is not like very definitive. This is a very subjective thing, and I mean, all in all, it may be seen as something that's not worth really discussing at all, which I mean, all of those critiques are fine. This is like a very macro way of basically how I look at the game rather than like micro ways, because there's already like micro terms that we use to discuss various parts of a BBTAG match. You know, there's like round start or oki, like things of that sort. But I kind of group certain parts of BBTAG matches in ways to kind of describe pace and flow of a match that I just find, I don't know, useful in my head. May not be useful to everybody, but I want to explain it. Now, as far as where the terms actually originate from, this is something that you mostly hear in like card games, for example. So we're talking like Hearthstone, Magic, Runeterra, Shadowverse. It also comes from MOBAs, so like Dota and like League, which is actually where I first heard the term and where I'm most familiar with the term when it comes to like laning phases and team fights and then pushing the nexus and things like that. Most recently, probably also in like survival games. So if we're talking like Fortnite or Apex, there's definitely kind of like an early, mid, and late game flow to those games as well, where like you dive in, you have a big old map that's definitely like the early game, and then the circle literally closes in into like a mid or a late game. Before like BBTAG measuring pace, in my head I've kind of come up with like what I see as early, mid, and late game. Of course, there's a lot of nuance because there is a widespread of how a BBTAG match can go. Some of them can last 2 minutes, and then some of them can last 10 seconds. It's a very out of control game. Let's just kind of jump into the explanation of how I see this concept that's already existed, how it applies to BBTAG. So the way that I look at early game is basically from round start to when the first point of momentum is taken. Right, so that's very specific phrasing there. Notice I'm not saying the first point of damage is done or who lands the first hit, who touches the opponent first, block or hit. No, it's like when the first point of momentum is taken. Early game can, I mean, once again, you know, depending on a BBTAG match, can last anywhere from like 1 second to like 15 seconds. I mean, I think a big factor of that is round start options. You know, there is a big emphasis on how round start plays into this game when it comes to building up your snowball, because I mean, this game can be a very snowball heavy game if you play it in that way. And if we're talking characters like Mitsuru, or Ragna, or just characters that have like really strong round start options, they could have very strong early game to where like they can kind of instantaneously off of second one of a match take that momentum. Essentially, that's not the way that it always goes across the board. You know, not every character has a strong round start option, and even if a character has strong round start options, there's sometimes a rock paper scissors effect that may lead to both players taking a more defensive approach in the round start, so like super jumping back or just holding back and just looking at what the opponent's going to do. Especially like, this is a generalization, maybe like game 1 scenarios against players that you're not too familiar with. BBTAG is a crazy game. So sometimes you just want to take a game to kind of observe your opponent, figure out their tendencies, what they like to do, how they like to round start, and then build upon that for the Yomi down the line. But yeah, essentially that's how I define early game. Now, in those defensive situations where players in the early game do like a super jump back or anything, they're kind of like jockeying for their advantage. So you may see players call assists to see if they're able to set up a advantageous cross combo scenario, if it's a sandwich even better, to basically get their opponent to block and to hold a mix-up or anything like that, or maybe just hit them something to kind of jockey for advantage to get their kind of game plan going, game plan started, to get that first point of a advantage, put their opponent in a disadvantage. I would say that the end of the early game is basically quantified by a couple of things, because just looking at life bars I don't think gives the full picture. It's also like the Oki or neutral situation after like a combo is done, and also like the resources on both ends. Who's under pressure, or like who's now disadvantageous, like definitively, not like a speck of a life bar that's a little bit gone on both sides of like, or like an assist got tagged or anything like that, but like no, who's like definitely from the first kind of meaningful point of contact is under pressure now. Did somebody burst, right? Did somebody burst and use that resource, and now they're under the pressure of getting their burst punished, and then they have to eat an Oki situation where they're first to burst because their point character took like a whole bunch of damage, and now they have their second character in, but if they get hit again, they're not going to have access to that burst for a long time. That's what I mean by early game. So the mid game would be happening right after the early game. And then in this case, I would say it is basically a tug of war. Like I think of it as a tug of war. It's a tug of war to either maintain, or so like from the person who has the advantage, right? It's a tug of war to either maintain the advantage that you just got, and maintain is a pretty broad word because it could be done through a multitude of ways. Some people play it safe, so their idea of maintain is forcing the opponent to approach them. I mean, maybe a risky situation in BBTAG, but like maybe forcing the opponent to approach them and playing with their assists rather than taking any big risks. Maybe maintaining a lead is snowballing your opponent. You know, maybe it's like going in and making sure they're under constant pressure, making them, you know, constantly guess on the defense. Maybe your sense of maintaining is screen control or zoning. You know, it's simply kind of predicting where your opponent wants to go or how they want to get in, keeping them out and covering those parts of the screen. But yeah, basically that mid game is like maintaining that advantage that you were already able to procure, and on the disadvantageous side, it's to overturn a disproportionate outcome. So like somebody trying to get the life lead back in their favor, or also, you know, from transitioning into that mid-game situation to where they may be in Oki or under pressure, defend that successfully and get back to being able to play the game. So that's kind of what I would define the mid-game as. But also, of course, the mid-game can just be a complete snowball. So like it could be like the off of the early game, you get your initial hit. When you get your initial hit, if it's just like a normal, we're talking like the most normal circumstances of BBTAG, typically it's not going to be too much damage. There will be some corner carry. You may be eating like 5-6k. It varies a lot case by case, situation by situation, if it's counter hit starter, what character we're playing. But we'll just say typically you're eating like 5 to 6k and then you end up in a corner positioning. And then you may have some Oki, you may have to eat media assist, there may be a strike throw mix. There's a lot of things that can happen. So that mid game of trying to overturn a disproportionate outcome is going to be getting out of that situation from losing the early game and then turning the situation into your favor, right? To prevent a snowball effect. It could be open to interpretation of when the mid game ends though, right? Just with the pacing of how BBTAG matches play, it could be like when you kill a character, or it could be when you bring health bars to the orange mark. You know, it's also going to depend on who won the early game, how their life bars looking and everything else. But transitioning from mid to late, there could be a couple of significant factors there. And so that brings us to the late game, in which case I would say it's a point in the game where there is such a defined disadvantage or advantage that kind of sets the stage for one player to have to basically solely rely on an attempt to outplay. And I use the term outplay to say the difference between an outplay and overturn that I used for the term in the mid game is that outplay, you're in like a drastically worse position to where you're not relying on the full resources of your team. You know, maybe you're in a 1v2 situation, or maybe you're in a 2v2 situation. It's just your characters are drastically low, so you can't be as frugal with assists or anything like that. But rather than overturning, you know, because in overturning, you're still playing a 2v2 game, still have both your characters, you're just trying to basically figure out a way to get your game plan started and take back control of the match. Outplay is a bit different. Outplay is your initial win condition that you set out when going into a 2v2 game isn't really there. You're trying to pick up the pieces and make things happen. I say when one player is in that situation, you've now transitioned kind of like to late game, and you know the other player is kind of in a situation where they're trying to close the game. Or late game can also kind of happen where the result of the mid game is a stalemate. I feel like this is a bit more rare, but there are some cases, and I have some examples that I'll be showing. But basically the way that the mid game sets out is that it ends up becoming a stalemate, and things can possibly get a bit scrambly, or both players are in situations to where like, okay, we're definitely not in the mid game anymore, we're not trying to snowball or maintain or overturn or anything, but we are in positions where like, yeah, this is like kind of scary, and you know, it's really risky for either side to kind of do anything. I have a couple of examples that I kind of want to go over that are hopefully going to display some of the concepts that I'm outlining now. So the first one I want to take a look at, why not? Let's get it from the boy himself, all right? Let's get a match between YoFavScrub and the one and only twitch.tv/GuzmanGaming1. So this is from Danger Time. This is from a SoCal-based local that started running online tournaments well into the pandemic, unfortunately. We hope you return, Christian. We miss Danger Time, whether it be offline or online. Just know that you're missed. And, you know, shout outs to Kite and Books while we're here. You know, Christian, one of the main people behind Kite and Books, so if you've had that in a match, you know, it is definitely somebody that you want to follow and support. Christian and Kite and Books on Twitter, just mini shill. But anyway, so this is Guzman versus Scrub at Danger Time. So what we want to look at here, so basically the interesting thing about BBTAG is like, so we got Can Escape from Crossing Fate, fight. The early game has already started. BBTAG, like I was saying, when it comes to round start scenarios, they're so polarizing and can mean so much to like the rest of a match, to where like basically, yeah, I mean the game has literally already started, but like in second one of a match, it could be such a significant advantage that's built up just due to some characters round start options and just kind of like the craziness of this game. Just this, you know, this situation right here where we're at 180 seconds is super significant. So let's see how this plays out. Guzman's on Yang Ruby, Scrub on Ragnar Ruby. Who's gonna win early game? We see here. Yeah, so Scrub tried to hop over the assist, and instantaneously Guzman got the first hit. And this scenario here, I would say, you know, based on the way that I think about the game, Guzman has won the early game. So like it's only been 5 in-game seconds, but I would say that Guzman has won the early game. There's been a significant amount of damage done to Ragnar. Guzman has this nice Oki positioning with Yang and Ruby that Scrub is going to have to deal with. If he's wrong, there's the threat for Guzman of like 2 bars there. Could even be a burst bait, but basically Guzman has the first point momentum. So just like that, I mean, it may seem a bit fast, but I would say that that is the end of the early game. There are some other examples here that I'm going to show that may have some longer early games, right? But this is just like to the point, you know, I think the average early game for a BBTAG match doesn't last very long. But yeah, we're kind of transitioning into the mid game now. So yeah, this is Guzman seeking to take a snowball approach rather than like a maintain approach. And I mean, with Yang Ruby, why would you not? Right? So Guzman kind of going for a snowball against Scrub here. And so it's going to be up to Scrub to try to overturn the snowball effect. And so through the power of Ruby buttons, right? Block that, boop, boop, able to do just that, right? So this is Scrub's attempt to try to overturn the one early game that Guzman was able to procure. Now it's going to take some effort. I mean, getting this damage on Ruby is significant. Ragnar has a lifesteal too. Things are evening up a bit. But now, yeah, you see Guzman trying to get back into that snowball approach. Just put Scrub right back under pressure. And I mean, yeah, this is rough. That, you know, damage or that health that Ragnar just regained getting diminished quite a bit. Now, I wouldn't say we're in a late game scenario quite yet, because the thing is, Guzman doesn't really have any resources at the moment, so should he get hit, he can't burst. Ragna is Ragna. So like there is a lot of life that Scrub can get back, and although Ragna is low, really all he has to do is just tag out Ragna and bring Ruby back in, and he still has a point where he has access to some of his team's core game plan. You know, he can get snowball effect going right back at Guzman. So I wouldn't say that we've transitioned to late game quite yet, but mid game is getting closer to ending and could be imminent on ending if Ragna does die. And I mean, this is not the situation that you want to be in, but Scrub defends it perfectly. So Ragna's out of there, Ruby's in there, and the battle for who is going to have the lead going to late game continues. The overturn effect is starting to pop up quite a bit here. Scrub gets a baited burst. All right. And so now, at this point, I guess the question would be, are we in the late game now? And the thing is, I mean, if we look at it on the flip side, you know, if we were able to say that Scrub wasn't in the late game in that previous situation, I would say that Guzman isn't in a late game in this situation either. He definitely still has access to, you know, he's definitely lost the momentum. Like, he doesn't have the momentum in the mid game anymore. It's definitely in Scrub's favor. But Scrub is still threatening to try to get his snowball going of his own to put Guzman in a unfavorable late game situation. But yeah, my man still has two characters. He has a Ruby, he has a gang. You know, the Ruby is a little low, but I mean, we just saw Scrub's Ragnar was a little low. That didn't really mean anything. Scrub is completely stabilized. Guzman could do the same. Could. Unfortunately, that's not quite what happened, but it was possible. But I would say with this character kill, this is a late game scenario, right? So now Guzman's going to be coming in with a solo Yang. As far as how good of a late game scenario it is, it's okay. Yang is a decent comeback character. The thing is, like, the problem for Guzman at this point is, like, if you look at the health bar, he hasn't popped Semblance yet, and given Scrub's resources and the team that Scrub is playing, Yang could die off of the next hit, even if he pops Resonance, right? Like even if he pops Resonance, the life regain that he gets, just given the resources the Scrub has, it's gonna depend on the hit. But like, Guzman could die without getting Semblance, but Resonance is still on deck. Let's see how this plays out. All right, just 5B through a gun blast. Gotta love to see it. Okay. Yeah, so Scrub Adrian cross combo, trying to close the game. You know, that is Scrub's goal here, is to try to close the game, but boom, Guzman was able to find a hit on Ragna, turn the tides here. And I mean, the way that they found the hit on Ragna, again, it's not overturning. He doesn't have his 2v2 at his disposal anymore. It was an outplay. You know, this was a cross combo and a tip for Scrub to kind of close the game, you know, abusing the 2v1 situation, kind of like the mismatch here. But Guzman found a way to outplay, and it's through the power of 5B. It's a beautiful button. So yeah, we're down to the 1v1 situation here. Scrub's Ruby versus Guzman's Yang. Scrub finds the hit courtesy of those beautiful Ruby buttons. And then DMCA. But yeah, that's kind of like the, I wanted to find an example of like a basic BBTAG match to kind of explain the early, mid, and late game scenarios. But I have a couple more clips that I want to show that may kind of blur the lines a little bit. Alright, and so being that this is my video and I can like choose whatever players that I want to go for some of my favorite players. So I specifically looked for a match for Surume, or Surume, I think they also go by, and wanted to find a video that was on a different pacing than the Guzman versus Scrub match. So I got Surume versus Pizamayo. This is from King of Giants Festival 2. And I mean, one thing that we already know about non-NA play, specifically like in Asia and Europe, is that they just have a different pace. Like, pacing tends to be a bit slower. It's also dictated by various other things, which is another entire video in itself. I don't really want to open up that entire can of worms, but I wanted to get Surume in here just because, you know, the distinctions of when early, mid, and late game hit and how they hit is very, very different. So here we go. You know, we have round start scenario here. How is this early game gonna go? This is game 2 of their match. So immediately, they both took a defensive approach, tried to go for the Teddy 5P. They had the exact same idea. Again, Pizamayo's on Blake Teddy, Surume's on Hilda Teddy. So, I mean, hey, we're already playing a little bit longer of our early game from the last set. Let's see how the rest of this plays out. Alright, so Surume, alright, that jump C with the 5P, some good stuff. Got to tag on a little bit of damage with Pizamayo's Teddy in the back. Is early game over? No, not really. I mean, that's a little bit of damage, but that's not like a significant advantage to say that Pizamayo is like, you know, they need to overturn. Not quite yet. So here we go. I don't know how you block that. I don't know how you block that on net play. Surume building up some pressure. Now that could have been, right? So this pickup right here, let me rewind. Yeah, so this could have been, if we got a pickup right here, absolutely that could have been the end of early game, right? Surume would have been down quite a bit of health on a happy birthday. Pizamayo has like 4 bars on deck. No telling of whether they decided to cash out on Oki or damage. I think no matter what they decided to do there, as long as they were able to get a pickup here and kind of influence that health bar a little bit and put Surume in a situation that they would want more than a dropped combo, I think early game could end. But since it did drop, I would argue early game is still going. So here we go here. Blocks the falling pain. Yup, EX corkscrew out of there. Don't deal with any of that. Activate a cross combo on my own. We're gaming. Dang, how long has it been? It's been like 24 seconds. They're still pretty much playing in the early game, right? Super slow pacing. They're still gaming. What a block. Y'all are crazy. And there it is. The first big hit landed by Surume. Not burstable, so Pizamayo has to eat a lot of this. And I would say at this point, specifically given, although there wasn't a ton of damage done to Pizamayo's Blake, that Teddy's gonna cross up. Surume is definitely at a point of advantage here. At this point, I would say we transitioned from early to mid game. They're no longer jockeying for an advantage or anything like that. No, Surume has advantage, right? Especially here. So that Teddy crosses up. Pizamayo's in a sandwich situation. Pizamayo is under pressure. So yeah, I would say that we should transition to mid game here. And I mean, if you didn't think we transitioned to mid game yet, yeah. If we haven't transitioned before, we've definitely transitioned now. But moving on. All right. Yeah, Surume is taking a bit of a different approach than Guzman earlier, right? Because Guzman won the early game, and Guzman was looking to go for like a snowball approach of like basically snowballing their way to victory. Surume, if you notice, you know, they got the early game victory over Pizamayo. They're going to be looking to maintain the life lead, and it could be kind of built into their team, it could be built into their pacing, could be built into their playstyle. But look, just a lot of 5Bs, a lot of checks, full screen 50-50 scenarios, and just maintaining, right? They're kind of forcing Pizamayo to have a hard time trying to overturn, just given the neutral game that Surume is looking to employ here. Now, that's not to say that there isn't some type of snowball effect that can happen if you're gonna get hit by the full screen overhead cross combo activation. And Pizamayo recognizes that, you know, does a good burst to get out of there. But now the Blake is in, and Pizamayo had this fantastic, seemingly a whiff punish, which is their big point of finally being able to potentially rally to try to overturn this match, right? So a large amount of damage here on Teddy from that whiff punish with the 5B. Gets opened up by the low. This is not looking good for Surume. A definite overturn attempt here from Pizamayo. I can't believe that Blake dodged the entirety of this Hilda pins. It has a good amount of startup. I actually kind of learned that a little bit poetry in motion the other day through playing Scrub and Monkey, of seeing that Hilda air super actually does have quite a bit of startup. She can even be kind of punished through it. But yeah, Blake just firing through, doesn't want to deal with that. Surume gets hit. Gets the knockdown. The overturn is definitely, I don't know how you tech that. Crazy defense. But yeah, the cross up, and boom. This Hilda's gonna die. So we're seeing a successful overturn here from Pizamayo for sure, right? To where, yeah, we're going into the late game. Surume just has the Teddy now. Yeah, look at the pacing of the match. We're at 96 in-game seconds, so essentially almost 100 seconds, around like 85 or so have passed. But yeah, it was a super long early game, and then Pizamayo essentially just found that one point to where they could overturn, get a reverse snowball going, and they did that accordingly. So now we are in the late game pacing. There is a mismatch. Pizamayo has healthy characters, 1v2 scenario, Yeah, Surume needs to outplay now. So now they're going crazy with these Teddy teleports, trying to get anything going. That was fantastic. Forcing pizamayo to burst, so couldn't get the entirety of that fantastic situation going, but still significant nonetheless. Teddy mirrors, huh? Alright. And yeah, this is that mismatch effect, so it's still 2v1. Surume has to outplay, right? pizamayo is trying to close the game here. It's up to Surume to have to outplay. So I imagine... Oh, nope, just a teleport. Fantastic DP, ready for that situation. And there it is. Surume is going to activate the resonance to try to even things out. Can't believe that pizamayo wasn't ready for... I wouldn't have been ready for this. I'm never ready for Teddy items, but like this is a pivotal item to not be ready for. Because there's resonance, you have got a burst available player. And Surume got those. So yeah, evening up the late game scenario here, where we will have a 1v1. So yes, the question is, how long is this late game truly going to last? We see the barrel, we're seeing all these things. Astral on deck, no more Astral for Surume. Maybe an Astral for pizamayo. Could it be? No. Patience. Absolutely nothing. What an interruption. So they're still going. But yeah, I definitely wanted to choose this match, definitely because of the really long early game, but also the really long late game and kind of like the turning point, to just like to show a little bit of a different pacing of like how you know, we saw a really fast early game between the Guzman and Scrub match, and this is like a really slow early game, just entirely different pacing in general. We're literally, you know, well into rampage time here. There's 35 in-game seconds left. No punish there. Try to get the whip punish on the item toss. Oh, 29 seconds. So what's gonna be? Oh, TRM baby, what you push blocking for? pizamayo gets that game. All right, but now I want to get into a little bit of a slow burner. So this match literally just happened. This is YoFavScrub versus ZeroShadowBlood at Cloudburst episode 2. So this is game 1. This is game 1 between the two of them. Of course, these two have played like a lot of games over like the past year or so, constantly meeting in like winners finals, grand finals, just like top 4 scenarios, top 8 scenarios. They have played a lot of games, but again, this one just happened. This is their game 1, and I think in terms of keeping early, mid, and late game in mind, it has a very interesting pacing for a couple of reasons. So let's just kind of see how this goes. We have the game 1 here, trying to figure out who's going to win this early game. They both activate cross combo, but yeah, Scrub gets hit by that low, and since he activated cross combo, doesn't have a burst available, you're fighting ZeroShadowBlood, you're gonna take a lot of damage. So I think this early game is over. Right? ZeroShadowBlood was victorious in their early game. We are in the mid game territory now. It's up to Scrub to try to overturn. They have the full game plan of their team intact still. You know, Ruby and Ragnar are still able to go, and they're going, right? They have essentially taken the life lead now. Just threw some nickel and diming damage on that Susuno. ZeroShadowBlood trying to get the momentum back into their favor. Scrub is in the corner. This is scary. Eats the overhead. Nice throw tech. But yeah, we have been in the mid game for some time now, and it is kind of persisting. Gets the, yeah, tries to, ZeroShadowBlood trying to do a knowledge check. That Yumi Rekka is like plus 5,000, and Scrub didn't mash, so he knew that it was plus 5,000. But yeah, some nickel and diming damage. Snowbird trying to lock down with the 6P. Amazing defense on that cross combo interaction. Did not only prevented the sandwich, but also just like ended up not getting mixed at all. So good stuff there from Scrub. But what good is amazing defense if you still get opened up by 5C? A wise man once said. All right, into the corner we go. It's Scrub's turn. Time for Scrub to mix. Is it gonna happen? Okay, just eats a gun blast. I mean, Scrub doesn't have like an insane amount of resources here. It's just like 4K, nothing too crazy. We're nowhere near a late game scenario on either side, and there's already like 65 in-game seconds that have already happened. Another cross combo scenario. Scrub, no thank you. It's just like crazy defense on both sides here. Okay, here we go. Scrub is gonna try it now. Can I get a mix-up, please? No thank you. I know what your team is capable of. These are two teams that do really high damage. Like Ragnar Ruby does a ton of damage. ZeroShadowBlood's Susuno Yumi does a ton of damage. Even this like this hit the Scrub lands. Where are we going with it? I mean, ZeroShadowBlood is disadvantageous. Is it late game though? I mean, it just takes one mistake on Scrub's end, so probably not. And I mean, there it is. A possible mistake. Get some damage going. Did not spend any bar, you know, once you keep the mix going. But yeah, like I said, ZeroShadowBlood isn't out of the late game. In fact, finds this big hit, and there it is. We have now hit the late game. There's 80 seconds on the clock. 100 in-game seconds have passed, and we finally found it. We found a late game. So this game had like an insanely long mid game, and it was purely due to both players' defense. You know, there was definitely points where Scrub was trying to overturn. He lost the early game, but he was trying to overturn, get a snowball effect going. ZeroShadowBlood said, nah, my defense is too clean. ZeroShadowBlood said, hey, I won the early game. Can I have that momentum that I ordered? Scrub said, nah, my defense is too clean. So like, they had a really, really long kind of mid-game rally, but ZeroShadowBlood was able to kind of become victorious. Scrub is stuck to the late game here, forced to outplay, and once again, the tale of Ruby buttons. You know, this is actually not a video about early, mid, and late game. This is actually just a video to complain about Ruby buttons, because we've seen, I think, a count of 2 Ruby button robberies so far. Oh no! The overhead lands. Scrub making the outplay happen, despite losing the really long mid game. We hit the DMCA special, so there it is. So I had to dig for a set like this one. Like I said, I had a couple of niche situations that I want to outline. This situation that's going to come up in this match is a bit less common, but I was able to find it regardless. So this is actually directly from Mystery Racer's YouTube channel. Mystery Racer, very good Shurigane player, recently has taken the path of zoning, and basically, you know, is playing Naruto Shurigane plus Batista nowadays, but also plays Shurigane Adachi, Seth, Susuno, a couple of other characters, and they upload a ton of matches to their YouTube channel, so definitely check them out. But this is them versus Legion Paws. Legion Paws, I know, has a ton of teams. I think Carmine Seth might be one of their main teams. I'm not 100% sure, but definitely somebody that I've seen use a ton of characters, and even throughout this set that's uploaded on YouTube, they had Adachi that they were using as well. So let's start back from the beginning. I got a little bit ahead of myself. Okay, so early game, what are we looking at? Mr. Racer threatening, trying to get some positioning going, sets up the sandwich situation. Legion Paws in trouble, gets the DP out. Probably no significant early game that has been won on either side quite yet. At this point, like, possibly, I don't know. I don't know if I would comfortably say Mystery Racer has won the early game at that point, just in that 3K shuffle, because I mean, Legion Paws still kind of has the burst. This is where things kind of get a little bit muddy. Like, Mystery Racer is taking a little bit of damage. Carmine is taking a little bit of damage. Is it safe to say that Mystery Racer has a significant advantage here? I don't know. The Batista 6P is coming. Legion Paws is under pressure. So I guess, like, by definition, you could say that the early game is over. So this is a slight early game victory for Mystery Racer, but not as potent and as prevalent as we saw in previous games. Very nice push block. Avoid that unblockable scenario. There was no cross combo on deck for Mystery Racer. So yeah, a bit more nuance here, because I mean, it was like Mystery Racer maybe won the early game, but did Mystery Racer win the early game? I'm not quite sure. Given the health that has been spent though, for Legion Paws, definitely needs to be careful here. 4 bars on deck. I think Legion Paws could have actually just died. Anyways, we're definitely in the mid game now. If we weren't before, we are now. All right. But yeah, the significance of this one, I don't, the reason why I picked this set is not really tied to the mid game necessarily, or the early game necessarily. We shall see what happens here. So mid game, Mystery Racer has a little bit of an advantage, nothing really to write home about. Kind of going in here, 2C, nothing, mids on mids. Oh, was cursed, okay, crazy. Legion Paws, Seth. Down to a little bit of a fatal territory, not quite out of it yet, still has access to their game plan, you know, trying to get in, had to spin a burst. Things are getting really tight here, down to the wire, gets a hit. Oh boy, are we still in the mid game? I don't know, are we still in the mid game? Mystery Racer can just like die, right? Mystery Racer needs to be really careful. That Batista is so low, doesn't have a burst available. It really just take a couple of Carmine hits and he's out of there. But I mean, is Legion Paws winning? I mean, he's kind of in the same position. Like, if Legion Paws gets hit, Carmine could just kind of die. Who won the mid game? Who's going into the late game with the advantage? Who has to outplay here? Do both sides have to outplay? I mean, I guess you could say that Legion Paws is like in the lead going into the late game. I don't know. Let's keep watching. It's just getting worse for Mr. Racer. Boom! Sniped out the Seth, hits the Carmine. Who's in the lead in the late game now? This is a situation, you know, right here where both sides are in fatal territory. Neither side really has access to their core game plan or really all their tools, because they both need to be super cautious. They're both at the brink of death. I would say, and this is a rare situation, but it does pop up in BBTAG sometimes for some matches, this is where the mid game ends in a stalemate. And we're in late game scenario, and post stalemate both players are in a position where they are kind of just stuck without play. There's still some, like, neither side is really looking to overturn or snowball at this point. It's really just a do or die, sudden death kind of situation that these two players have kind of ended up here as a matter of just replaying it out. Yeah, that's really kind of why I want to choose this set here. Unfortunately, this late game doesn't play out too much longer. So yeah, just the active swap throw, good stuff there by Mystery Racer. But I mean, still, like, even though the Carmine is dead, Mystery Racer has two very low health characters. They even on the incoming here wasted some bars, so Legion Paws is going to come on with the Seth, and we'll be able to challenge Mystery Racer, so Mystery Racer needs to be a bit careful. Calls of Batista, activates the Resonance right here, try to nullify some of this mix. Maybe not the best timing, or maybe it doesn't really matter the timing. That's Batista in your face. You won't have to hold this. Oh, overhead. That should be game. That's what I would say. But yeah, they're just rallying through this. Oh, okay, that stall, Batista jumps C, and Mr. Racer's gonna take it. But yeah, the really interesting scenario here is kind of like some of the blurred lines that can happen when you're like generalizing, and maybe it's some of the drawbacks of seeing this game in an early, mid game, late game kind of scope of like, what does that really mean? To where, yeah, they're mid game rallying at this point. You know, they're kind of trying to snowball and get their game plan going, but they truly end up in a situation, if not here, you know, they truly end up in a situation to where they're both kind of trying to outplay, and there really is no sense of like overturning or maintaining or anything at all, because there's nothing to maintain. They have no resources. If not here, definitely here. Definitely here they hit stalemate potential. Like, that's it for sure. So that's definitely why I wanted to showcase this match. I have another match that also poses a interesting scenario. So this is actually me. This is me versus BeardedOne in a PC tag and chill tournament hosted by Guzman Gaming 1, who we saw play earlier. So this is me on Yumi 9. I'm going up against BeardedOne's Waldstein Akihiko. Here we go. Okay, so this is me on Yumi 9 going up again, BeardedOne's Waldstein Akihiko. So let's take a look at how the mid or early, mid, and late game kind of play out here in this match. But here we go, game one, me versus BeardedOne. So yeah, got that hit, ended up dropping the combo entirely. In fact, I probably should have mashed here to check him. I just didn't realize the situation in time of what was going on. Because that Waldstein did end up making contact. I may have recovered a bit before. It may have been worth checking. Have I lost the early game here? The situation's not the best, but like that Wald's gonna have to go away. I don't think it's a really super noticeable advantage that BeardedOne has gotten up until this point. But now it is. Now he's won the early game, is what I would say. Oh, I mean, now he's definitely won the early game. Man's just popping off now. That Yumi takes a big dammy whammy. Am I gonna burst? What am I doing here? I'm taking all that. Yumi is not looking too hot. I recognize it. I gotta get her out of there. Call the 4P. Call for help. Why? Why did that hit that way? Hit walled behind me. I think off a Yumi jump A, but it's cool. We got her out. I'm at a deficit going into this mid game, but I'm playing 9 the Phantom. You know, I can do whatever I want. There we go. Instant overhead. Boom. Give me that DP. This was unfortunate. This was an input error. I wanted to go 5A2C. I do not use 5Cs. Look, I'm sorry. BeardedOne, you got hit by the net play classic. But I mean, you shouldn't even be mad. This is a DP punish. I could have killed. I wanted 2C into Fist, but I ended up getting 5C instead. But still, trying to make this mid-game rally. Gets caught by the 5P. Literally bursted at the last point possible, because if that Akihiko was dead, you know, we'd definitely be transitioning to a late game situation, but being able to save Akihiko's life keeps this match in a mid game scenario. I'm still trying to rally here. I've been calling a lot of Yumi assists. I mean, we've kind of like stabilized in the matchup now to where I'm beyond overturning. You know, I have life lead now. I'm looking to snowball. I'm calling Yumi assist. I'm going in. I play 9 to Phantom. The world is my oyster. I'm privileged. Let's go, right? So 6P. I'm still attempting to overturn. Well, like I said, I've kind of successfully, you know, pulled away in this tug of war a bit. Got hit by that low there. That's kind of my first mistake for things to even up. So yeah, things are definitely evened up here between me and BBTAG. We're trying to fight to see who will be advantageous in the late game. Foreshadowing. Who is going to be advantageous in this late game? We're still going. Instant overhead, no confirm. Some awful. Oh! Or sandwich. BBTAG's characters are kind of low. You gotta be careful, my guy. Uh-oh! Punish on Akihiko. And the drop combo with walled. So that would have been definitely a situation where possibly Yumi could have died there. I don't know what walled routes are, but unfortunate drop there. So I pretty much got a free punish on Akihiko. Are we in late game territory? I mean, it's a little nuanced, right? Like, I would say that I have a pretty significant advantage here on paper, but like I still haven't quite got Yumi out of there. I also wouldn't really say that we're at a stalemate. There's still parts of my game plan and everything that I can get going, especially if I'm able to get Yumi out of there. So I don't know. This is where things get a bit more nuanced. Are we in mid game? Are we in late game? What's going on here? I would say that we're still in mid-game until that point. Again, it was contingent on the fact of me getting Yumi out of there. And I mean, she's out of there, just not quite in the way that we needed for her to be. So she's dead. But I ask a question. So we are in some type of late game. But the question that I'm asking is, who's at advantage? Between me and BBTAG in this situation, who is at advantage? We can look here. So BBTAG has some things going in their favor. They have a 2v1 situation. So they have their walled and their Akihiko both alive. I've activated Resonance and they have some cross gauge on deck. They've already committed to a 2A. So there is some type of pressure that I am going to have to take post Resonance. But me, on the other hand, so I'm down, I don't have a partner, right? I can't do that game plan anymore. But I'm coming in with, if you add up Waltzy and Akihiko's life, I have way more life points than both of them combined. And I'm only going to get more because I just popped Resonance. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Another thing to keep in mind, I'm playing 9 to Phantom. The world is my oyster. I can do whatever I want. And really, like, BBTAG needs to be extremely careful when it comes to calling Akihiko's sister or anything like that. I have EX Fist. I can snipe out that Akihiko. I can snipe out that walled. So with that in mind, I mean, there's pros and cons to both sides in here. We're definitely in a late game scenario. Yumi's dead. I've popped Resonance. But I would argue that this may be another stalemate situation, if not possibly in my favor. Like, which may sound weird. I mean, like, Yumi died, but like, just given the situation of how Yumi died and what 9 is coming into, I mean, the lines are a little bit blurred, right? Who's at advantage now? Right? I not only successfully defended against the mix, I push blocked, we're at full screen in this late game scenario. Who's at advantage? Again, it might be me. Like, even though Yumi died, it actually might be me that's advantage in this late game scenario. So we see it here, you know, I have the full screen space again. That snipe that I was talking about with the EX Fist. BBTAG needs to be careful. In terms of trying to figure out who needs to outplay here, I mean, I guess it's a sense of me needing to outplay because I'm playing solo 9. I have the tools equipped to do so. Like, I definitely have the tools equipped to do so. This is not a, I'm not sweating too much in this situation. BBTAG, they have 2 characters, you know, surviving this Resonance is significant, but truly they need to close the gap. Or, like, they need to get something popping here so I don't just get to, like, run all crazy with skills all over the place, create some tricky scenarios for them, right? And there we go, yeah, forced to push block. Unfortunately for BBTAG, they did not get this combo here. So that is an example of BBTAG being able to use the points of advantage that they have in this late game scenario despite the stalemate. They still do have 2 characters at the end of the day. So they have access to an assist, they have access to coverage. And really, that would have been a significant hit if it got converted off of. I don't think I would have died if that made contact with walled there and they were to pick up with Akihiko. But it would have been very, very nice. You know, we kind of saw the full display of the pros and cons to both sides here, to where I have access to some tools that I can implement in this 1v2 game in the late game. And so that's my pro. You know, I'm playing 9 to Phantom. And BBTAG has access to an assist. So unfortunately, I'm playing 9 to Phantom. So I was able to survive this 1v2 and make it a 1v1 situation. And the question becomes, how will the rest of this go? Because clearly in this late game now, it is definitely come down to I am in significant advantage. So I just need to play it slow, don't do anything too crazy, get the anti-air. I don't have any combos, I'm nervous, this is a tournament, man. And yeah. But really, truly the point of this video was to kind of showcase how nuanced the late game can get. And yeah, I think that's all I have to say on this subject matter. Again, it was just something that popped up. This is kind of a spur of the moment video. I don't know how informative it is, useful it is, if this is something that you can relate to, something that is quantifiable, something that gives some interesting food for thought. But let me know what you think. You know, leave a comment, send me a don't send me a Twitter DM, send me like a Discord DM or something, or like at me in a server or something like that. But I mean, this is on YouTube, so I mean, like, comment, subscribe. Maybe there's more BBTAG videos coming. I kind of want to create some more BBTAG content, but yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this early, mid, and late game. So when I say it on commentary, hopefully it means something. Maybe it won't. Take it easy.